An engineer decides he wants to make some easy money. He thinks to himself, and he decides he's going to set up a medical center in an abandoned corner store. After all, he's an intelligent man. How hard could it be? He puts a large sign on the front, promising to cure any illness for $500, and if he can't, the patient gets $1,000. A brain surgeon is walking past and sees the sign. Laughing to himself, he decides to make some easy money by faking an illness and pretending to not be cured. He walks in and tells the engineer, "I've got a problem. For some reason, my taste has disappeared." The engineer says, "Nurse, bring me bottle number 273, and gives it to the surgeon to drink. The surgeon spits it out and exclaims, "Hey, this is pee!" "You're cured," says the engineer. $500, please. The next day, the surgeon goes back wanting to make his money back. He says to the engineer, "For some reason, my memory is failing." The engineer says, "Nurse, bring me bottle number 273. Of course, the surgeon says, "That's pee. I'm not drinking that." "You're cured. $500, please." Finally, the surgeon goes back one last time, determined to make his money back. He tells the engineer that he can't see a thing. The engineer says, "All right, I can't cure blindness. Here's your money." He hands the surgeon a $20 bill. "Hey, you said you'd give $1,000. You're cured. $500, please." Jimmy is in the car with his mother, and she's driving down the highway. A truck in front of them contains adult toys. All of a sudden, a large black falls off the truck and hits the windscreen of the car. "What was that, Mummy?" says Jimmy. "Oh, it was a fly," replies the mother, slightly embarrassed. "Jesus," says Jimmy. "Did you see the size of the cock on him?" An old man lay dying under the ceiling fan, which had the bearing of a military helicopter airily surveying the aftermath of a natural disaster. Surrounded by his son, his twin daughters, and a haggard-looking nurse who looked about ready to end it all if only she could find the bloody switch, he was finally breathing his last. His son, who loved him dearly and wasn't at all sure if he had been cut out of the will or not, burst into tears at the plight of a man who would look more at home in a red woolly outfit than he ever could in drab white linen. "I do not wish to die today, Anthony," he intoned, fixing his gaze slightly above his son's left shoulder. "There is something you must do to save me." "Tell me what to do, Dad. I can't bear to look at you this way," cried Anthony. "There is a land not far from here where no one ever dies. It is not for dying, you see. That is where I must go." "Where is this place, Father? Tell me, and I'll take you to it." "Take me there now," he said faintly, as if in great pain. "Take me to the living room." An old man crashed his car into a Ferrari. The owner jumps out and confronts the old man, saying, "Give me $10,000 cash, or you'll be sorry you crossed me." The old man replies, "Whoa, wait, buddy, I don't have that much money, but let me call my son. He trains dolphins." The old man dials his son. As he is about to speak, the owner of the Ferrari yanks the phone out of his hand and says, "So you train dolphins? Well, your old man just hit and damaged my car. You bring me $10,000 or I'm going to whoop his and your ass." The son answers, "Okay, buddy, give me 15 minutes and I'll be there." In exactly 15 minutes, the son pulls up in a Jeep. He jumps out and slaps the Ferrari owner about a bit, then walks over to his father and says, "Dad, I train Navy SEALs, not dolphins." Two old friends arrive at St. Peter's Gate and are shocked to bump into each other. Thelma. "Louise, no way!" Louise. "Thelma? What on earth? Well, not Earth anymore, but how'd you get here?" Thelma. "Froze to death." Louise. "Oh, bless your heart. That must have been horrible." Thelma. "Actually, once the shaking stopped, it felt like a warm blanket and a nap. Could have been worse." "What about you?" Louise. "Heart attack. Thought my husband was cheating. I came flying home ready to bust him. Turns out he was just in the den watching Wheel of Fortune. Thelma. Then what? Louise. I didn't believe him, so I tore the whole house apart. Attic, basement, closets, under the beds. No mystery woman anywhere. I got so worked up I keeled over. Bam! Gone. Thelma. If only you'd checked the freezer first, we'd both still be alive. Two Irish lads are strolling down a street in Liverpool, England, when they spot a shop window that reads, "Suits are £10, jackets £7.50, and trousers and dresses £5. One turns to the other and says, "Would you look at those feckin' prices? We could buy a boatload, haul it back to Ireland, and make a fortune, double, maybe even triple the money." The other lad says, "That's a grand idea, but do you think they'll sell to us if they know we're Irish?" The first lad grins and says, "Don't worry, I've got this," and walks in, putting on his finest English accent. "Good afternoon. I'd like 20 suits, 30 jackets, 50 pairs of trousers, and 25 dresses, please." The shop assistant squints and says, "You're Irish, aren't you?" The lad replies, "Ah, feck, how'd you guess?" The assistant smiles and says, "This is a dry cleaner." A young blonde bride calls her mother, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, Robert doesn't appreciate anything I do for him." Her mother tries to soothe her. "Now, sweetheart, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." "No, Mom, you don't get it. I bought a frozen turkey roll and he completely lost it over the price." Her mother scoffs. "That cheapskate. Those turkey rolls only cost a few bucks." "No, Mom. It wasn't the price of the turkey. It was the airplane ticket." "Airplane ticket? Why on earth did you need a plane ticket?" "Well, the instructions said, 'Prepare from a frozen state.' So I flew to Alaska." A woman was waiting to board a bus when she realized her skirt was too tight to lift her leg high enough to step onto the first step. Feeling a bit self-conscious, she smiled at the bus driver and reached behind to unzip her skirt slightly, hoping to create enough slack to step up. However, her first attempt failed. With another polite smile, she tried unzipping her skirt a little more, but still, she couldn't manage the step. Frustrated yet determined, she gave it one last try, unzipping her skirt even further in hopes of finally getting on the bus. At this point, a large Texan man standing behind her gently picked her up by the waist and placed her on the first step of the bus. Shocked and outraged, the woman spun around and yelled, "How dare you touch me? I don't even know who you are." The Texan, unfazed, tipped his hat with a grin and drawled, "Well, ma'am, normally I'd agree with you, but after you unzipped my fly 3 times, I figured we must be friends." Pete and Mary were in the mall when a priest stopped them and said, "Didn't I marry you two last year?" Pete replied, "Yes, Father, you did." The priest asked, "Any children yet?" Mary sighed, "Unfortunately, not yet." The priest smiled and said, "I'm going to Rome. I'll light a candle for you both to be blessed with children." 1 year later, Mary runs into the priest again. He asks, "So, any kids yet?" She beams, "Yes, 2 sets of twins and 6 more. 10 in total." The priest says, "That's wonderful. Where's your husband, Pete?" Mary replies, "He's gone to Rome to blow out your bloody candle." So I told Hitler about 9/11. I told him about the carnage and the aftermath and how the state of America was changed forever. But he was confused. So I told him about the backstory and how bin Laden began to plan this in the 90s, but he was still confused. Then I told him about the numerous connections and the conspirators who trained to fly the planes. I saw the look on his face. What's the confusion? Hitler. But why not 11? 3 men are sitting in a hospital room. The first asks the second how he contracted COVID-19. He replies, "Because I support Boris Johnson's herd immunity." The first man responds, But I am here because I attended a protest against Boris Johnson's herd immunity. They turn to the third man, who has been sitting quietly in the back, and ask him how he contracted the virus. He answers, "I'm Boris Johnson." A horse walks into a bar. The bartender says to it, "Hey, haven't you been in here every day this week? Are you some kind of a lush or something?" The horse replies, "I don't think I am," and immediately disappears in a puff of smoke. You see, a famous philosopher once explained that his own existence was real by saying, "I think, therefore I am." Since the horse denied that statement, it ceased to exist. I'd have explained that earlier, but that would be putting Descartes before the horse. Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, and Angela Merkel are fishing on the North Sea coast. Boris Johnson starts to brag while looking at the water. "We British have the best submarines in the world. Our subs can be submerged underwater for over 1 month without refueling." Merkel is looking impressed. Trump is not. Donald Trump can't stand to not be in the limelight and speaks loudly while gesturing frantically. "Oh, that's nothing. So little time. America is the greatest. We have the best submarines ever. Our submarines can be underwater for over 1 year without refueling. Can you believe it?" Johnson is impressed by the American might. Merkel was even intimidated. Logically, Johnson and Trump look to Merkel with a malicious grin while she is awkwardly quiet. In this moment, a gray submarine emerges in front of them. The hatch opens, and a soldier in an old uniform jumps out quickly while raising his right arm and screaming, "Heil Hitler! We need diesel!" A man is stopped by a police officer and is given a ticket. Man: "Hey, what's this for?" Officer: "That's a fine. You've been fined for driving without a seatbelt." Man: "Oh, I'm a 29-year-old couch potato who can't do anything but lays at home eating takeout because I never taught myself to cook and—" Officer: "Why, what are you saying?" Man: "Well, I'm defining myself." The cowpoke rides up to the saloon, dismounts and ties up his horse, and before entering the saloon, walks around behind the horse, lifts up his tail, and plants a big old kiss right on the horse's butthole. He walks into the bar, and the bartender says, "Howdy, partner. Can't help but notice you're mighty friendly with your horse there. What's that all about?" To which the cowpoke replies, "Oh, that? I have chapped lips." The bartender says, "That's a new one on me. Does it really cure chapped lips?" The cowpoke says, "Doesn't do a thing, but it sure keeps me from licking them." An officer pulls over a car full of nuns. A police officer saw a car full of nuns going much too slow for the highway they were on. He pulled them over and went up to the driver. "Why are you going so slow?" The nun that was driving then replied, "That sign right there says 20. The police officer looked at the sign. "That's the highway number that you are on." "Oh, sorry, officer." The police officer looked in the back seat to see 3 nuns that looked like they were terrified. "What's wrong with them?" the officer asked. The nun that was driving looked back at them. "We just got off of Highway 190. A renowned philosopher was held in high regard by his chauffeur, who listened in awe at every speech, while his boss would easily answer questions about morality and ethics. Then one day the chauffeur approached the philosopher and asked if he was willing to switch roles for the evening's lecture. The philosopher agreed, and for a while the chauffeur handled himself remarkably well. When it came time for questions from the guests, a woman in the back asked, "Is the epistemological view of the universe still valid in an existentialist world?" "That is an extremely simple question," he responded. "So simple, in fact, that even my driver could answer that, which is exactly what he will do." 2 nuns are driving down a country lane late one night. Suddenly, a vampire lands on the bonnet of the car, hissing and scratching at the windscreen. "Ooh, Sister Mary, quickly, show him your cross," says a panicking Sister Bernadette. Sister Mary quickly winds the window and leans out. "Get off the fucking bonnet, you prick!" She shouts. Johnny went on a camping trip. All the tents were taken, so he shared with his teacher. Johnny says, "Can I play with your belly button?" My mom always lets me when we camp. So the teacher, a little confused but intrigued, says, "Sure." 5 minutes later, the teacher says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, that's not my belly button." Johnny replies, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, that's not my finger." There was a guy named John who worked on the 15th floor of an office building. John was so lazy that even standing in the elevator felt like exercise to him. One morning, he came in late as usual, holding a giant cup of coffee and moving slower than a snail on vacation. His boss stopped him and asked, "John, why are you late again?" John sighed dramatically and said, "Sir, the elevator was broken, so I had to wait until it started working again." The boss frowned. "You waited instead of taking the stairs?" John nodded proudly. "Of course, I stood there for 2 hours pressing the button. I almost burned 3 calories. The boss was speechless. "John, you could have walked up." John looked horrified. "Walk? Up 15 floors? Are you trying to kill me? My legs are purely decorative." The boss shook his head and walked away. John finally got into the elevator. As the doors closed, he sighed again and whispered to himself, "People these days, so judgmental of a man's commitment to doing absolutely nothing." Moral of the story: some people will find any excuse not to move. A darling little old lady was walking down the street dragging 2 bags behind her, a large garbage bag and a smaller shopping bag. The large garbage bag had a tear, and every so often a $20 bill would slip out and land on the sidewalk. A passing police officer noticed and rushed over. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, "but you've got $20 bills falling out of your bag." "Oh, really? Darn it," she replied. "Thank you for letting me know, officer. I'll go back and see if I can find them." The cop, now a little suspicious, asked, "Ma'am, where did you get all that money? You didn't steal it, did you?" "Oh, no," she chuckled. "You see, my backyard backs up to a golf course. A bunch of the golfers relieved themselves through a knothole in my fence right into my flower bed. It drove me nuts, as it completely ruined my roses. So I came up with an idea." She leaned into the cop and whispered, "I started hiding behind the fence with my hedge clippers. When a golfer sticks his pecker through the knothole, I grab it and say, 'All right, buddy, $20 or it's coming off.'" The officer burst out laughing. "That's brilliant, and I have to say that's pretty clever." Then he pointed to the other bag. "And what's in that one?" With a sly grin, the old lady said, "Not everyone pays up, AR." A man was getting a haircut prior to taking a trip to Rome. He mentioned the trip to the barber, who responded, "Why would you want to go there? It's crowded and dirty, and full of Italians. You're crazy to go to Rome." "So how are you getting there?" "We're taking United," was the reply. "We got a great rate." "United!" exclaimed the barber. "That's a terrible airline. Their planes are old, their flight attendants are ugly, and they're always late." "So where are you staying in Rome?" "We'll be at the Downtown International Marriott." "That dump! That's the worst hotel in Rome. The rooms are small, the service is surly, and they're overpriced." "What are you going to do when you get there?" "We're going to go to see the Vatican, and we hope to see the Pope." "That's rich," laughed the barber. "You and a million other people are trying to see him. He'll look the size of an ant. Oh boy, good luck on this lousy trip of yours. You're going to need it." A month later, the man again came in for his regular haircut. The barber asked him about his trip to Rome. "It was wonderful," explained the man. "Not only were we on time in one of United's brand new planes, but it was overbooked and they bumped us up to first class. The food and wine were wonderful, and I had a beautiful young stewardess who waited on me hand and foot. And the hotel! Well, it was great. They'd just finished a $25 million remodeling job, and now it's the finest hotel in the city. They were overbooked too, so they apologized and gave us the presidential suite at no extra charge." "Well," muttered the barber, "I know you didn't get to see the Pope." Actually, we were quite lucky, for as we toured the Vatican, a Swiss guard tapped me on the shoulder and explained that the Pope likes to meet some of the visitors, and if I'd be so kind as to step into his private room and wait, the Pope would personally greet me. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, the Pope walked in. As I knelt down, he spoke to me. What did he say? He said, "Where'd you get that haircut?" A beautiful blonde lady wobbled into a casino, looking a little tipsy and unsteady on her high heels. She put 20,000 euros on a single roll of the dice and said, "I hope you don't mind, gentlemen, but I'm always luckier when I'm naked." She stripped off, rolled the dice, and shouted, "Come on, Lady Luck! Mama needs new clothes!" When the dice stopped, she screamed, "Yes, I won!" She grabbed her winnings, hugged the dealers, picked up her clothes, and strutted out the door. The two dealers stared at each other in shock. Finally, one asked, "What number did she roll?" The other replied, "I don't know. I thought you were watching." Moral of the story, not all drunks are drunk. Not all blondes are dumb, but all men are men. Men. 3 Italian nuns die and go to heaven. At the pearly gates, St. Peter greets them and says, "Sisters, you all lived such exemplary lives that the Lord is granting each of you 6 months back on earth as anyone you wish." The first nun says, "I want to be Sophia Loren." Poof, she's gone. The second nun says, "I want to be Madonna." Poof, she's gone. The third nun says, "I want to be Sarah Pippolini." St. Peter frowns. "Who? I've never heard that name." The nun pulls a folded newspaper from her habit and hands it to him. St. Peter reads it, and suddenly bursts out laughing. He hands the paper back and says, "No, sister. The article says the Sahara pipeline was laid by 300 men in 6 months. A young lad says to his father, "Dad, I've decided to join the army." His dad says, "Well, son, I'm so glad you've decided to do something positive with your life. And as you know, I'm an ex-soldier myself, so I'd like to help you in any way I can. You're roughly the same size as I was when I joined up, and I've still got my old uniform in a case in the loft. Go up and get it from the case and try it on so you can get an idea of what it feels like to wear a uniform. Oh, and you'll also find a backpack, a water bottle, and my tin helmet, too. Bring them all down and try them on." The son comes back down from the loft with the uniform on, looking very pleased with himself. His dad stands there full of nostalgia. "Well, son, you look great," he says. The son says, "Dad, if I get the broom, will you teach me some rifle drill?" His dad says, "Listen, son, this is a secret between you and me. I've still got a rifle, but for God's sake, no one must ever know, okay?" "Wow, Dad," says the son, "I'll never breathe a word. Where is it?" His dad says, "Climb back up into the loft, put your hand under the tank, and you'll find it." The son says, "You've got a tank as well."